Welcome back to Dr. Supercoach. In this video, I'll be discussing the upcoming captaincy decisions that I'm looking at this week coming up. Hey, what's up? It's JB from Dr. Supercoach, and if this is your first appointment here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming updates. Now, today we're going through the weekly captaincy article, the captaincy decisions that I'm going to be looking at this week. I admittedly was alerted to Pitnet's dominance a little bit late last week, and I think I recommended English over Bont. However, my logic for Bont getting tagged by someone at Carlton was still sound. He did get tagged. Turned out that game was more so just an avoid rather than trying to pick a safe score out of the two. Both of them had pretty good opposition, so I think in hindsight that one should have just been called an avoid. Clayton Oliver's 119 was enough for me. I took that as vice captain, and then there were other good scores throughout the round, obviously. A couple that I called on, a couple that I missed out on. So let's have a look at this week coming up. So the round starts on Friday with Port Adelaide versus Melbourne. Now, as a lot of people know, Clayton Oliver didn't do well against Port last year in the first game and then missed the second game. Petrarca didn't do well in the first game but did well in the second game. And last year it was a bit of a strange matchup last year in that first game. I can't quite tell you what we did to shut down both Clary and Petrarca in the same game. I think if we knew what we did, we would do it again every single time we played against Melbourne. I highly doubt we shut both of them down. Which one we do go to, I'm not quite sure, whether it's just Clayton Oliver, whether it's neither player. We haven't really tagged hard this year. Drew has been in and around the midfield, but he's also been getting a lot of wing time. Our midfield has been extremely fluid this season. So look, I think there's going to be a good score come out of this one. I just don't know who it's going to be from. And there's a chance that neither of them score well, as we saw last year at Adelaide Oval. Depends on how defensive Port start the game. So I think I'm avoiding this game as a VC, despite two players being in really good form. If I was going to VC anyone, it would be Petrarca is where I would put the VC on this one. Otherwise, I think it's probably safe to avoid, but you might not think so by the end of this video because it's a very tough week for captains. Game 2 is my favourite vice captain of the round. It's going to come from Errol Gulden against North Melbourne. Now, Errol Gulden, his form stacks up with the best players in the competition right now. His 3-round average is 143. He's got a 2-round average of 156 because he's hit that mark back-to-back games. Did well against GWS as well. Now comes up against North Melbourne. I don't see them tagging. I'm not sure why you would put a tagging effort into someone who just plays on a wing or plays a bit of half forward. I think if they were going to do any tagging, it would be if Parker or Mills or something was in good form. But I think they just leave this one altogether. No point, I don't think, tagging. Sydney don't really beat you with just one player. It's sort of the sum of all the parts that come together. And they're not having an amazing season, but I expect them to do all right in this one. And this was in losses as well. Collingwood and Fremantle, Gulden lost. Sydney will lost both of those games. So if they get a win, and if he's allowed to roam around and do what he wants, I expect this to be a very good Errol Gulden game. So he's my vice captain. I think just 120 plus is more than okay. I think I would be tempted to take something like if he scores a 118, 119, I'd probably just take that as well, because it does look like a tough captaincy round. Now, because you're doing that, you might be bypassing the Tim English here. I would be very surprised if Crows didn't try someone to go with Bont. I think Mars Stadium is a little bit of a hole. I don't think that it usually generates too many consistent and good scores or consistent and good performances from the teams that go down there. I have no clue why Western Bulldogs keep sending their games down to Mars Stadium. I think Etihad is just such a great advantage for them. However, I don't mind Bontempelli in this one. If you don't have Gulden or if you're bypassing him, I don't mind Bontempelli, but I much prefer English. I think Riley O'Brien lets up a lot of good ruck scores. I have looked into that this week. Riley O'Brien is not a stopper, and Crows have only really let one or two good midfield scores. I think it was Connor Rosie in the showdown is pretty much the best score that they've let up from an opposition midfield. So that's at Adelaide Oval, I guess. So Mars Stadium, a bit different. But no, I think English is a safe vice captaincy here if you bypass Gulden. Into the next match. Now, this is interesting because this is where stats, they're going to offer two separate things, stats, and it just depends what you want to sort of buy from it as to whether it's going to be a positive or a negative. Tom Stewart against Fremantle has typically scored well. Defenders in general against Fremantle this year have typically scored poorly. Tom Stewart at Optus Stadium has typically scored average, low tons. But Tom Stewart this season, just in general, seems to just be in the best role. There's no Mitch Duncan this week. Henry comes back to hopefully shore up the back line a little bit. Stewart, I think he's going to be able to do anything that he wants. I think it could be a very big score. Whether you do want to save your vice captaincy for Tom Stewart against Fremantle is a discussion. I still think English is a better vice captain and Gulden is the best vice captain of the group. I did consider captaining Stewart or him being my captaincy option this week, but with how defensive Fremantle have been against other sort of half backers, maybe captaincy is not a great idea. And I know I've avoided talking about Jordan Dawson again. He's just not the best option in that game. I think Tim English is clearly a better option than Jordan Dawson, I think, in that one. Mars Stadium turns out some interesting stuff. I don't trust anyone going down there except a surefire ruckman who has had a little dip in form, but don't get it twisted. He's scoring poorly against really restrictive ruckman and he's dominating against everyone else. Now, this one gives a very good captaincy option in my opinion. Josh Dunkley against the Suns at the Gabba. We did see Dunks put out a very good captaincy score a couple of weeks ago. That was the 149 against Carlton at Marvel. He does typically have a good record at Marvel as well. Gabba, he's gone 117, 84, 109, 103. Neither here nor there. The 84 is against the restrictive, good Collingwood midfield. A big score against Melbourne. A good score against Fremantle, who are somewhat restrictive, and a good score against Essendon as well. I think this one is at least going to be a healthy ton. A 110 plus from Dunkley against Gold Coast without Took Miller as well. That midfield's leaving a little bit to be desired. I think that's a bit of a soft kill for Dunkley. So at the moment, I'm currently set up with Gulden into Dunkley as my vice captain captaincy. Now, this game here as well offers two players. Tim Taranto has typically gone well against anyone at the G, I believe. So 103, 112, 114, 144, 118, and then the 90 against Geelong, who are pretty damn good. Against Essendon, he could go well, but I think the better option in the match is actually Zach Merritt. Very, very good history against Richmond. Does typically score very well against them. Richmond do not tag. So despite Essendon having no midfield this week, it's going to have to be Zach Merritt doing everything, and he's not going to get attention from the opposition as per what history has been able to tell us. And Hopper is also missing this game as well. So Richmond also a little bit undersized in that midfield too. So I think Merritt could go crazy. I'm recommending him highly as a trading option, which means it'd be silly if I didn't recommend him as a potential captaincy option as well. So whether you trust Essendon, whether you trust Merritt, you might not. That's fair enough. But I think he's going to put together a good score against Richmond this week. That leaves a couple of dead rubbers on the Sunday. So we have Hawthorn versus West Coast. Both teams here, I love captaining players against these teams, but when they verse each other, they don't have the best options to just captain. I'm ruling this one out completely. No captainable options. Even if you've got Sicily, he's not captainable. Not this year. Vice captainable for sure. Not captainable. So Carlton versus Collingwood. Now we've got Nick Dacos here, but Ed Curnow has come into the side and is named on a forward flank. I don't think Ed Curnow can run with Nick Dacos at all. Maybe for a quarter at best, but realistically, you don't want to captain someone who is potentially going to have a tag for the day, who is predictably going to have a tag for the day. So I think it's quite silly to know that information and still go in and captain someone. So in this game as well, I don't think there are any amazing options. Carlton do generally give up scores to halfbacks as well. If Curnow wasn't playing, I'd be all over that matchup, but unfortunately not the case. GWS versus St Kilda. St Kilda quite restrictive on the scores that they allow and where. I think they do allow for some chipping around. So, I mean, like a Whitfield might go well, but he's not owned at all. Josh Kelly in that midfield could do decently, but I wouldn't be captaining anyone. It's when Canelio, Green, and Kelly all play together, one of them sub-tons every single time. One of them has sub-tonned when all three play together. So all three will be playing together. They'll buck the trend eventually, but until they start doing that consistently, I'm not interested in using my captaincy on any of them. And then on the other side, St Kilda side, you've got a potential not playing Jack Steele, as well as Sinclair, who has been in the midfield and defense, uncaptainable options, both of them. Roland Marshall, however, could put together a pretty good score against GWS. Their ruck stocks aren't incredible. Nothing restrictive coming from them. So I don't hate if you're really stretched, if you miss all your Saturday loopholes perhaps, and you take a flyer on Roland Marshall. I think Marshall is probably the only acceptable Sunday option. So I'd be popping my VC/C all on the Saturday. I think is probably the best option, unless you own Petrarca. But to finalise, Gulden is my guy. I do like English. I don't mind Stewart, but Dunkley is going to be my safety pick, and I could potentially be swayed to swing over to Zach Merritt if he's in my side as well come Saturday night. That will do it for me. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, the question of the day, of course, is who are you vice-captaining and captaining? Who did I potentially miss out? I know I always miss out on a player. Someone always lets me know in the Slack, you've missed out on this guy, you've missed out on this guy. That's great. I'm very glad that people are doing their due research as well. When they do alert me of that, I do tend to try and put it around on the socials if I can. But keep doing that, keep doing so, and make sure you comment down below who you're considering. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, then you'll probably enjoy some of our other content, so make sure you check out the links on the screen, and you can support us via our Patreon or our merch store. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys all next week.